And on the line with us is Ralph Nader. Ralph Nader arguably needs no introduction, but I will nonetheless. The lawyer, consumer advocate, former presidential candidate, author of numerous books. His latest, Breaking Through Power. It's easier than we think. His website, nader.org. You can tweet him at Ralph Nader. Ralph Nader, welcome back to the program.
Welcome to Thom Hartmann, scholar, historian, advocate for justice.
Thank you, kind sir. It's been too long since we've spoken. I'm pleased to see that you've got a new book out, and I just find it absolutely fascinating. The premise of the book, you talk about how our power has been basically taken, and there's some wonderful backstory here. You're essentially quoting the Libertarian Party and Gary Johnson. Except you put it in this historical context. You say, on the abolition of children from working in dungeon mines and factories instead of going to public schools, Clarence Martin, president of the American Bar Association, said that such laws are, quote, a communistic effort to nationalize children. It appears to be a definitive positive plan to destroy the republic and substitute a social democracy. With regard to Social Security, you quote former president of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce saying this is an attempt to Sovietize the country, et cetera. What is the power we need to break through before we get to how do we break through it?
Well, it helps to start with history. The quotations you just used, the blasphemy of Social Security and abolishing child labor in dungeon factories is now the commonplace. We take it for granted. And that's because enough people rose up, enough people marched, protested, voted the right way, supported insurgent political parties, like the Liberty Party in 1840 against slavery, or the Women Right to Vote parties, or the Farmer Labor Populist Party parties in the late 19th century. I mean, why don't we learn from our forebears? They decided at a certain time they weren't going to stay home or on the ranch or farm. They were going to get out into the public square. And they were going to show up, and showing up is half a democracy. This new book I've got is a very short book, as you can see, for very small pages. It's 140 pages. And here's my commentary on this book. If you don't want to be a more powerful, effective citizen, defending your interests, that of your neighborhood, state, region, world, don't read the book. If you want to be powerful, if you want to overcome whatever sense of hopelessness and powerless you have, then read the book. It will inspire you. There are actual real people like you in the past and the present described who changed things and built whole movements. They started with no money, with no influence, just the right values, determination, and fire in their belly.
That's serious stuff. I mean, that's really serious stuff. People, we tend to have this anodyne story about America, and actually it's been a pretty damn bumpy ride to get to the progress that we have right now.
Very much so.
And you were a huge part of this, by the way. I mean, it's and in fact, in your book, you quote, you tell a story about how Ford Motor Company said that if the seatbelts that you were calling for, the safety improvements that you were calling for back in the 70s were passed, Henry Ford II was saying this will destroy the industry. And then later he testified to Congress that if you guys hadn't passed a federal law, we never would have done it. And now look we're saving all these people's lives.
There you are. Blasphemy today, commonplace tomorrow. I remember we started anti-smoking efforts on airlines, buses, trains, interstate, and they said, what? This is un-American. You're communistic. You're preventing the freedom to smoke. I said, what about the freedom of non-smokers and their children not to be exposed to inhaling your smoke? And now, if you had the millennials walk on a plane now and they saw people smoking, they'd go nuts, wouldn't they?
Well, they wouldn't know the context of it, certainly. I mean, you and I are old enough to remember getting on planes where the back half of the plane was filled with smokers and the whole plane stunk.
Right. And the interesting thing about this little book, Breaking Through Power, is a progressive publisher, City Lights publisher in San Francisco, is that you can identify with these people. You can identify with 350.org on climate change. Started with a class at Middlebury College with a teacher whose name now is fairly well known, Bill McKibben. The students said, "What? We keep talking about it. Why don't we do something?" So they got 1,000 people and they marched to Burlington, Vermont. And then they realized it was the largest march in the United States on climate change. They said, "What?" And so they organized this, 350.org, and it's all over the world now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an extraordinary look at movement politics, and I love the subtitle. It's easier than we think.
How many times we have to say that? It's easier when we think. Less than 1% of the people organized to have Congress watchdog hobby clubs. Let's call it hobby.
Yeah.
In congressional districts, 435, can turn Congress around on issue after issue. Higher minimum wage, full Medicare for all, cracking down on corporate crime, changing the corporate tax escape system, as long as they have a majority of public opinion behind them. And on many, many things, we are not polarized as a society, left-right. We are left-right on together, arms locked together. As you know, I wrote a book on this called Unstoppable, the Emerging Left-Right Alliance to Dismantle the Corporate State. And there are 24 areas: criminal justice reform, pulling back on the empire, de-bloating the military wasteful budget, breaking up the big New York banks, on and on, where you have left-right support. And if you have left-right support, Congress cannot stop it. They won't. They'll run away. They'll do what we want because they want to get reelected. And they can game a left, they can game a right, but they can't deal with a left-right alliance.
Well, perhaps. I mean, I don't disagree entirely, but what I'm seeing right now is that the Koch brothers and some of their billionaire buddies have created this enterprise, Americans for Prosperity, that it seems to function like a political party. And my understanding is that it has better funding than the Republican Party. It's got more offices. It has more employees than the Republican Party. I mean, we've got a shadow political party here that has every Republican member of the House and Senate, not necessarily every, but the vast majority of them, living in fear, even if they live in a totally, quote, safe district or safe state, because they're living now in fear of being primaried by this group of right-wing billionaires.
Last I heard, they didn't have many votes. Once you organize votes back in the districts of the American people, the big money can't have an impact like it has. In fact, it'll run away. And so this is a shadow-type operation, like you said, Thom. But how about a visible Congress watchdog local with full-time staff? Let's say just 1,000 people out of 700,000 men, women, children, each congressional district. Let's say they got together. They said, okay, this is going to be our club. We're going to watchdog Congress for the rest of the people, and we're going to report on what they do, and we're going to summon them to town meetings, and we're going to raise enough money to open a couple offices with 2-3 full-time people, and we're going to reflect the popular opinion of our district. Game over. It's over.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
We beat Congress again and again in the 60s and 70s until the corporations put the money in and the people coasted and they didn't stay with the marches and the rumble that Nixon was afraid of, the rumble of the people, et cetera, and they took over the Congress. But we can take it back. Look, 1,500 corporations pretty much control a majority of the members of Congress on a lot of their issues. They don't have a single vote. We're the ones who have a vote. What are we doing? Sitting around, making excuses for ourselves, living in our private lives, which get more and more unsettled because our public citizen duties are not being filled. So we can get a living wage and get a clean environment for our children. We can get a future for the country.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. Ralph Nader, and you are so making my point that just showing up to vote is not enough. People think that they have fulfilled their citizenship duties. There is so much that we can do with just a fairly small investment of time and effort.
Sure.
And Ralph Nader is the author of the new book, Breaking Through Power. It's easier than we think. Nader.org, the website. You can tweet him at Ralph Nader. Ralph Nader, it's always a pleasure and an honor speaking with you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Thom. We got 4 days coming up next week. Go to breakingthroughpower.org.
Hang on just a second. Hang on just a second.
The Thom Hartmann Program.
Okay, go to where?
breakingthroughpower.org. 4 days, 2 in Constitutional Hall, 2 at the Carnegie, but it's going to be live streamed.
Great. Thank you, sir.